And we are back here once again with another episode of the Iron Man Podcast, episode 530 with Mr. John Stater, aka Dad's Den of Pop Culture. So, when you eventually have like daughters or sons, or I don't know if you're married or anything, do you want them to come up to you and be like, "Hey, Dad," you could be like, "Oh, back in my day, this was my first comic." Back in my day, we had like Batman Begins. Is that what your end goal is?
I do have a daughter, and she has to hear that constantly.
Oh God. So, if you guys don't know, we're going to be talking about some interesting stuff today. Not the crazy situation that just happened. Nothing historical happened this past weekend. It's a regular, normal Saturday. But I'm kidding, guys. In all seriousness, it's great to have Mr. John on. Talk to him on Twitter. I think we were supposed to do this last week, but I was like, man, I'm just too tired. And if I'm too tired, I can't give a proper one-on-one conversation. And as what everyone knows, for these kind of one-on-ones, first impressions do matter. So, I want people to have the best interpretation of whoever is coming on for the first time. And as we like comic books, and so do I. I have my own second channel that's for comic books, actually. And, what's crazy is like a lot of people got mad because I put like comics are dying and then like issues with the comic industry. This is what a lot of people that aren't successful on YouTube don't factor in. You have to make an exaggerative title to get people to inherently click on your video. Now, clickbait would be like as if I didn't actually run down issues with the industry. That would be actual clickbait. But I have to inherently get you in to watching the video. And if I had put a standard video of like comic book sucks, well, here are my reasons. Well, you probably won't even care about that. But this is what I gotta tell people, man, because no one really understands this when it comes to like nerd stuff, which is like something doesn't have to entirely die off for it to be not considered dying. Dying would mean like interest dies down as far as like word of mouth, conversation, products get worse. So that means people start pulling out less of like maybe investing in like products or movies or whatever. Something doesn't have to holistically all around die for it to be dying. People don't know. If you've been living under a rock, do not let people in the mainstream industry fool you. Comic book shops have been closing down. We literally had just another one closed on not too long ago in Michigan, in that area. The guy it was a 4-minute video of a guy saying all the issues he had. We had the guy, Glenn, come out like not too long ago.
Yeah.
And obviously he shut up because he probably got a talking to by some people, because as you'll know, what's crazy about this industry is after things like that happen, you won't hear from the person, surprisingly. It's crazy how you'll hear from Mark Miller, but you won't hear from him. The difference is Mark Miller is really rich and ultra successful. Well, they can't touch you at a certain point.
Can't do anything to Miller.
Yeah. So we'll start here since it's your first time here, man. We'll start with your origin story as your superheroes. People know that. You always got to get the origin story out of the way first, just in case you ever make any second or third appearances down the road, people already would have gotten to know you. So how was your life growing up, man?
It was pretty fun for the most part.
Got a lot of toys back there.
I got a lot of toys. God, a lot of those I've bought in the last 4 or 5 years. Because now I have money, right?
It's crazy what that can do to people.
Yeah, back in the 70s, you get a few Star Wars figures, you feel pretty good. You didn't you knew a few kids that had every single figure. And you didn't really like those kids, but for most of us, you get that. You get to be 45, 50 years old, and suddenly you actually have some money, and you could waste it on crap. But I had a good childhood. I was kind of I was a geeky kid, and so of course there was always a little bit of the stigma to being sort of the weird, awkward kid. But had my friends, had a good time. The problem's there. I've had a good life. I feel like I'm doing my obituary.
So after high school, what ended up happening? Did you go to college? Did you end up doing the whole college university thing? You went and did a whole bunch of things for a degree that you probably didn't get a job in, only to be paying back a whole bunch of student loan debt.
Strangely enough, I went to UNLV. I was a history major. And being a history major, you're not going to become a history teacher. You got to be an education major to do that. The most obvious job path is history professor, which I didn't do. But you do learn how to do research. And that is actually what I ended up doing in my job. I worked for a commercial real estate firm in town, researching the commercial real estate industry, sort of How healthy
Okay.
is it? What's the economy doing? So strangely enough, and I didn't have any student debt because my parents saved up my whole life, and so that worked out nice. Yeah, so went to college, got out. I was doing a couple odd jobs,
Hmm.
ended up getting a job with this commercial real estate firm as a courier. So basically, driving around all day, delivering packages, stuff needed to be signed, um, in a car with no air conditioning and no radio, because that's how it was. And I was a kind of young married couple. We didn't have that much money, which is tough
Hmm.
when you live in Las Vegas. But did that for a few years. They needed a research guy. I said I could do that. I didn't know anything about commercial real estate, but I said I could do it. Kind of got some on the job training, and I've been doing that
You went
now
to the fake
for
it till you make it route.
a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. And so 25 years later, I'm still working with them, still doing that stuff. So, I'm a stable kind of guy. I like to get into a good spot, and I like to stay in that spot if at all possible.
Okay, so okay, we talk about commercial real estate. You talking about like the actual housing market?
Well, for commercial, it's like shopping centers, warehouse buildings, office buildings.
Okay.
Get a little bit into land, get a little bit into apartment buildings, like the buying and
Mhm.
selling of them, but not the single family home stuff. Yeah. If
Okay.
you went to high school when I went to high school in Las Vegas, um, there's a really good chance you went into real estate in one form or another, because Las Vegas, at once upon a time, Vegas doubled in size about every decade. And so it slowed down a little bit after the Great Recession, but there was just tons of jobs in the real estate market one way or another. So I mean, like I work with
Mhm.
a guy I went to high school and junior high with. Another guy I went to high school with is at a different company. My sister works in a real estate sort of capacity. It's just sort of like, if you were going into anything sort of professional, and you're not a lawyer or a doctor, there's a good chance you ended up in
Oh,
real estate in Las Vegas.
one sec. Do you have any fans on or anything?
Oh, I do have
I don't
one
think.
back here. Yeah. Yeah. Let me turn it off.
Oh, that's fine. I thought you were just hitting your cord. I was like, man, that cord does not like this man. Actually,
Oh, no, 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 no.
that was my fault, everyone. I should ask. I usually always ask him before, but as you guys know, when you get old, you kind of forget everything at this point.
Oh God, yes. That's for certain.
Yeah, because like mostly routine things that you would normally do, you just forget. You're like, oh, that one time you forgot is like, oh, but as you know, it wasn't that loud, so it's fine. So at this point now, how would I say this? Is the market generally bad to, let's say, buy a building to like rent out for operations, as the media tries to point it out?
Well, if you're buying right now, it's a little tough. Interest rates are
Mhm,
kind of killing the sales market at the moment. Not
mhm,
100%, but it's sales are definitely down from where they were a few years back. Um, Rentals are actually, I mean, it depends. The industrial market's doing it has been doing really good. It's slowing down just a little bit now. Office buildings are having some trouble, and some of that stems from the lockdowns, people working from home. It's just kind of it's at that point where they're trying to figure out, because look, you got to pay for the space, right? So if you don't need so much space, can
mhm.
we give some of it back? Can we get it to a smaller office, save a little money? So there's kind of a downsizing going on in the office. Retail's actually doing pretty well. It kind of has its cycle up and down, but right now it's sort of
Yeah.
on an upswing. So it kind of depends on what you're talking about. But from a sales side, yeah, it's pretty slow right now.
So, as you have your own YouTube channel, what was your inspiration for making one? Like, did you watch somebody or a lot of people and you were
Yeah.
like, you know what? They made that one video you didn't like, and you were like, I can do it better. And then you
I
realize all the hardships.
I think the first thing I started watching a lot of was Plaid Stallions. I don't know if you've ever seen that. He's a guy that collects toys, does a few pop culture things. He
Okay.
does these podcasts, and I would listen to him because one of the things I do in my job is a lot of data entry. Just researching what's going on in different buildings and
Mhm.
stuff. So it's kind of cool to have like a podcast on in my ears while I'm working,
Yeah.
keep me occupied. And so I'd listen to those things, and of course, when you're listening, there's stuff you want to say. When they're talking about
Always.
this, you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, and of course, you can't do that because you're not on. Um, so watching that, and then I was watching some other guys here and there. and just I'm like, why not? Like, why not just give it a shot? See if it works. See if anything happens. I'm in my second year of doing it, and it's going okay. I mean, I tend to be more. I try to focus on reviews of things that I like. So I'm not doing like the acolyte videos that everybody's doing, saying this thing sucks, etc. And I'm not saying it doesn't suck. Frankly, I haven't watched it. I don't know. But
I got out of that stuff, man, around after Obi-Wan Kenobi season 1. I was like, you know what?
Exactly.
Hoping it. I had this in my head. If they can't get a character of this magnitude good in a satisfactory way, why would I believe anything else out of them is going to be good? Because before Obi-Wan was Boba Fett, and Boba Fett was quite probably literally one of the worst things I'd ever seen. I'm not even going to recall, like, that shit was terrible. It's actually bad.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Like, and I thought to myself, if I ever like review these shows, because for me, I like to like review things in order. So if I ever go back to Star Wars and I review things like in order, it's like I could just watch that and binge it in like a few days. I don't want to sit there and wait till an episode comes out at midnight, watch it, be disappointed that it sucks. Because we were doing that for a while. Like, I was doing that ever since they did it with WandaVision back during the pandemic, where I had a bigger YouTube channel. I was a popular person. I had a bigger YouTube channel, and we would do like watch parties. I would wait till the episodes drops. We could talk about it. After a certain point in time, not only did it become so boring because we like half the time the episodes were like not good, the show would finish, the show would conclude, and you'd be like, damn. Wow, that was just really meh. Like,
I think too, like when the trajectory is not good overall for show after show after show, it's, at one point you're in there and you got some good things to say, you got some bad things to say, right? It's just your normal criticism. I like that episode. I didn't like this episode. I like this part, but I didn't like that part. If the quality starts going down and it's, oh, this sucked, that sucked, everything sucked, dude, I don't have time for that. Now, if I didn't have like a real job or something, and I'm trying to like make my living on YouTube, it makes sense, right? Whether you like it or hate it, you watch it, you review everything. That's what's going to bring in the numbers. While the world is watching, or maybe not the world, but while the world is watching The Acolyte and people are reviewing that, and that's going to get you views. I'm over here reviewing Tucker's Witch from the 1980s. Which actually did pretty good for one of my videos. But my attitude is like, life's too short. I don't want to spend it watching stuff I don't like or don't think that I might like. Obviously, you don't like everything you see. So I have a tendency to go look for stuff, either stuff that I loved way back when and I want to give it another watch, or just trying to find little hidden gems, things that people have forgotten, take a look at them, throw my 2 cents out there for them. Because ultimately I said I'm not monetized right now. I don't have the following, etc. But even if I did, I'm not making the bulk of my money off of videos and YouTube and all that. I just want to have fun. I want to do something that I'm going to have fun talking about, fun connecting with other people about, and sadly, staying positive on the internet is not necessarily the pathway to really fast success, but that's cool because my attitude is I'm just doing this, something to maybe leave my daughter, maybe grandkids someday, some, images of me on the screen talking about things I love. And I'm just going to keep doing it, whether anybody's watching or not. I have a good time doing it.
Yeah. For me, I've always had the motto too. The only reason why I do this is because I do it for fun. Because I don't know, if you're someone that likes this stuff, you're always thinking about it. You're always thinking about like your favorite scenes, your favorite parts of movies, your favorite songs, and playing movies. And I just really wanted an outlet to talk about them because I would have so many things pile up in my head. And there's sometimes where you have so much pile up in your head that to the point you get on camera, you're like, oh, you can't even speak. So throughout time, I remember I had my bigger channel before YouTube took it down for BS reasons, as they always do. I didn't have an outlet to talk about movies and stuff like that because I would go watch a new movie. This is back when I had my bigger channel, so I think to myself, well, I can't put that on there because they're not going to even like this stuff. And I was just very conflicted back then, even with that kind of success. So now, I've learned a lot since then. We have a channel here for all that movie stuff, TV discussions, news. The comic channel, we have that. And then I have 2 other ones that I'm doing. One for YuGiOh because I wanted to redo that one. The technical stuff is done. I just got to put the videos on it now. And gaming wise, And I've always told people this before. Different people on YouTube could also be doing the same things that you're doing, but just in a different way. Like it's something that I've learned playing competitive card games. Is like everyone has fun in different ways. If someone has fun making content that way and giving their audience what they want and that's what the audience is willing to watch and they enjoy that person, they're just having fun in a different way. I've never seen it as, well, I'm having fun my way, so that means that person is not having fun.
Your fun is wrong.
Yeah. If they're being successful, I really can't fault them for it. Like all that matters at the end of the day is success, and people look at numbers anyway, But then again, as you've been doing YouTube for a while now you'll understand this. A lot of people won't because they're viewers, and it's fine. This is one of the fewest things in life where if you actually don't do it, you literally won't know the fullest extent of it. Like I feel like viewers don't really ever understand what goes into all this. A lot of people think it's just like you sit down, turn on the camera, you just go. And some people can't do that. Some people can't do that, and it comes out really great. I can't do that. I have to rehearse. I have to say my intro probably 10 times before I even start the actual video,
Yeah.
So how have you gotten better with making videos actually? Because, a lot of people kind of start it and they kind of quit it after a while because, they're not seeing any success or any level of growth, honestly. So how did you consistently push through that when you first started? Because, I understand someone putting out a few videos and there's nobody there commenting, there's no likes or nothing. So how did you get past that for anyone that's struggling with that right now?
It can get ugly once in a while because when the algorithm suddenly shifts on you, you're going like, oh, this video is going to do pretty good for me. If you got like 3 views and you're going, what the hell happened? What have I done? What did I do wrong? Why don't you like me anymore? And you have to videos. You got to fight through it.
Yeah, you also need to share your videos. I've noticed that a lot of views that I've ever gotten is I share them in. This is an idea people could do. Join Facebook groups that are tailored to your specific liking. And then if they allow you to post videos, don't obviously spam. Post like the 1 video a day or go on Twitter. Even though you have to use Twitter, just post there. And the algorithm could maybe circulate your video. Use social media. Even if you don't want to interact with it, just use it to post your videos, share them.
Absolutely. I do that on Twitter. And I've thought about Facebook. I don't know if I want to go there or not, but I might because I think it probably would help. But for me, it's just, a couple things. Some of the people I've watched who've done well, they get questions. And what do they say? Like Gary from Nerdrotic takes about 5 years, and you got to stick with it. And you got to keep making the videos.
That is so true.
It takes a while. And so if you're going to do it, that's what you got to do. If you get bored after a year, you're done. You're not going to become huge probably in a year, and definitely not if you're doing the kind of videos I do. So I went into it with the mindset of I'm going to do this long term. And again, partly it's fun for me. Like you said, it's kind of fun to do reviews. You got the stuff in your mind. And it also changes the way that you watch and read things. You don't just sort of passively consume when you know you're going to maybe be doing a review of something. You think about it a little more deeply, which kind of gives you a new angle on things, especially if it's stuff that you've watched or read in the past. Well, now you're going to do it again, but you're maybe paying a little more attention. You're not just staring at it. But I've also maybe a decade ago, I started producing like game material for Dungeons and Dragons type games.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah, so I published a lot of stuff over the course of a decade. I would see people on maybe Reddit, different places, who were actually discussing whether or not this Stater guy was actually a group of people who were producing game content because I was putting so much of it out. And again, for at the time, it was fun. I'd had a game group. It kind of broke up. I didn't have anything else to do, so I started a blog. And I started posting stuff to the blog. And then I thought, maybe like once a month, I'll take all the stuff I posted and I'll put it in a PDF. People can download it. But once I started down that path, okay, well, let me make the PDF look a little better. And okay, some of the stuff doesn't work that good as blog post. Well, screw it. I'm just going to make a little game magazine, go with that little fanzine sort of thing. Called Nod is what I called it. And it did relatively well. And then it was like, well, maybe I'll try taking some of these existing rules, modifying it for something, put a game out. So I did a few things like that. Eventually had built up a pretty good repertoire of material. And it was kind of the same thing. You sit down every night and you write. You write for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours,
Mhm.
depends on what you're doing. And people would ask, how do you get so much stuff done? That's how you get stuff done. You just have to be disciplined about it. You have to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's the same with the videos.
Mhm.
So I kind of knew I was going to go long term, and I got enough discipline at this point in my life. I sure as hell didn't when I was a kid, but I now have enough discipline that like I can say, okay, let me plot these videos I'm going to do. I mean, just this earlier today, I did 3 videos, put them together. I haven't edited them or anything yet, but
Mhm.
and I do mostly just do stream of
That's what.
consciousness. I mean, I
That's
think
another
about it,
thing that I would tell people too. If you're older and you got a bit of a busy life and you do YouTube, do more than one video at once. And if the
Oh,
audience knows you're only
absolutely.
gonna upload about what 2, 3 times a week, do like 2 videos
Yeah,
one day. Then when you're like off and your kids are in bed or your wife's or significant other in bed, like for that hour of free time you got, do that next video. Get them done. That way, at least you're producing videos on a
absolutely.
consistent schedule. And then when those videos are done, start working on the next one. And what
Yeah, like,
other thing people lack at is determination. If people want to get
oh
big,
yeah,
and people usually define big nowadays as getting to 1,000 subs, because that's what YouTube considers like very small level big, 1,000
I could
subs,
dig it.
ads, and
Yeah,
everything. Well, how do you get there? Hard, all determination. If
and you
other
make
people you've
videos.
seen has did it, you just make videos, you improve each time in a video. Think, what could I
Yeah,
have done better to improve that video? If the video came out
yeah,
good, try to make every video like that one that you think was
yeah.
really good. Also,
Absolutely.
play
Yeah.
your own videos back to yourself. Anyone that's learning out there, if you can't watch your own videos, just keep in mind, how can anybody else? Just keep that as a thing.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes like when I'm doing comic book review stuff,
Mhm.
you have a particular camera setup. I'm looking down at the
The one you
desk
have
where
is
I
the
have the
one I'm
comic
gonna
book.
do for him. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, like the Alpha Flight videos that I do.
yeah,
So once you get that set up, it makes sense to do 2 or 3 issues at a sitting,
yeah.
because the other stuff that I do, if it's like TVs, movies, more often than not, I have the camera on me. I have
Mhm.
little stuff, I guess it would be right about here,
Yeah,
images, still images, mostly because I don't want to have to deal with like copyright strikes and crap like that.
obviously.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so then once I got that set up going, I'll have everything prepped. I'll do it, and I'll do maybe 2 or 3 videos. It depends. I mean, man, again, since it's sort of like something I'm doing on my own time, not making any money at it or anything, there's certain weekends where you're going, I ain't doing nothing. I just
Mhm.
want to relax this weekend. You hit another weekend and suddenly you do like 6 videos. I got 3 of them I'm going to do tomorrow. All right. So I do 3 a week. I got already 2 or 3 in the can. So that puts me good till,
Mhm.
early August or so. And so, yeah, that's just what you do. And, like you said, I mostly do kind of stream of consciousness. I just kind of get on and start talking about it. But while I'm driving to work in the morning, I'm almost rehearsing the videos. I start thinking about, okay, well, I need to do this thing this weekend. And I
Mhm.
start going over in my head and even talking out loud in my car. Bah, bah,
Mhm.
bah, 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 bah,
I'll
bah.
even think in my head at
And it
work, like,
helps.
okay, this is what I
Yeah.
make. This is the first thing I want to make sure that I bring up immediately because it's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Then people do this a lot when they have smaller channels. They tend to ramble sometimes. Try to reel in that back. And some people like the mindless
Yeah.
rambling. For me personally, I look back and I went, those could have been a lot more cohesive if I had just structured it
Oh,
out a little
absolutely.
bit.
Yeah.
You don't even have to completely
Yeah.
stop rambling. It's more like just structure it better. That's all you
Yeah.
got to do. You just got to
Yeah.
put it
I'll
together
make
better.
notes. So I'll have
Mhm,
kind of paper with, here's some major ideas I
mhm.
want to hit in the order I want to hit them. You get off topic once in a while, which frankly,
Yeah.
you know, I, I'm almost built for that. I have too many facts in my head, and I'll go. But sometimes, like I'll watch other people's videos. They'll get off on a tangent about some show or whatever. And I'll be like, well, okay, let me write that down. What is that show? Go seek it out later and be like, oh shit, that's awesome. I love that. So sometimes going off on a tangent is actually a good thing. But you're right. If you're rambling too much, that's one of the things I'll do. I watch my videos. I go, okay, I can clip that part out. I can clip that part out. That's not very good. I'll go ahead and edit a couple parts out, make
Mhm.
it a little bit tighter. Yeah, absolutely. But I think the main thing is just to get up there and start doing it. I mean, that's the key. if all you're doing is thinking about it, not
then
going
you're
to
not
get
doing
anything
anything.
made. Yeah.
Oh,
So
another thing a lot
when
of
I
people do
started, I
too.
bought a camera, I bought a mic,
Yep.
and said, okay, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway.
A lot of people fall into this trap, and this is something that people always say before they start doing YouTube. Is they'll be like, "Well, I hope my family and friends subscribe." I'm just going to say this right now. That is something that is literally one of the most dumbest thing people usually always say. Guys, people have to win. Your mom is going to subscribe to your YouTube channel because she's your mom and she loves you. And that's just kind of how it is. It's the same thing if you wrote your first book. Your mom says she's going to read it. She probably doesn't. She says she likes it because she loves you. That's it. It's mostly like the idea behind it is you really don't want your family and friends to be your only peers. The reason why you do a YouTube channel is to expand past that to a potentially larger sample size of people that don't know you. Keep in mind, and you can even check your own subscribers or anything. Some of your friends and family probably are not even sub to you. And you probably think that would suck, but you got to think of this too. They're viewers themselves. If you're not going to be their cup of tea, well, then they're not going to sub to you. And that's the thing, I always told myself I should earn that friend subscription. You shouldn't just sub to me because you think I'm a cool guy or whatever. I mean, that's awesome you do, but you should want to subscribe because you genuinely like what I'm putting out. You know, family, friend, doesn't matter who it is. You know, so that's what I would tell anybody. That's one of the biggest common things I always hear. It's like, well, I hope my family and friends sub to me. Yeah, they probably will to give you a number boost, but are they going to actually watch all your videos? Probably not, to be completely honest. That's not
I mean, honestly, the first view on most of my videos is my wife, you know, and then I'll follow up with her and say, did I sound like an idiot? Yeah. Did I sound like a moron? No, it sounded okay. Cool. Awesome. But, you know, she's also, though, sometimes interested in the stuff that I'm talking about as well. I mean, she collected some comics back in the day. She likes sci-fi fantasy. She's way more knowledgeable and into Star Wars than I ever was. I was a Star Wars kid. She read extended universe type stuff and all that. She had the entire run of Marvel Star Wars comics at one point. So, you know, so there's some overlap. Yeah.
Well, if your wife is watching this right now, let her know.
She might be. She might be. Yeah.
I got the Epic Collection for Star Wars: The New Republic. It's what takes place after Return of the Jedi, which was Mara Jade and Thrawn or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I told you before, after the movies, after I watched the originals to the prequels to the Disney stuff, like I think most of the reason why I think those Disney movies don't hit, and it's the reason why the storytelling is so bad for them. I'm not trying to be mean to people here. I'm really not. But when it comes to any franchise, even the most hardcore fan is not going to go out and read books, especially comics. Let's be honest. Comics attached to brands are not as read. Comics are a niche within a niche of another niche. You're going into like indie comics. I'll be honest, man. A lot of people did not even know there were books for Star Wars, let alone comic books. And then you have the Disney trilogy. I didn't either. And then the Disney trilogy rolls around, and you're starting to go, well, hold on. We went from beating everything to now it's back to shit again. And they didn't tell you. All they told you in the credits were after this happened, so this happened. Bruh.
Only book that I ever knew about was Splinter in the Mind's Eye because it was out when I was a kid. And at the time, it was like, I remember I was in my 5th grade classroom. I'm looking at, like, we had the little bookshelf, you know, with stuff on it. 5th grade is where you're starting to read longer books and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm looking and I'm like, is that Darth Vader? Is that Darth Vader on the cover of a freaking novel? What the hell? Boom, got it, read it. So, but yeah, like I was 5 when Star Wars came out. Actually saw it the next year when they re-released it at a drive-through, which I figure is one of the most 70s things you could do. I would have been 11 or 12 when Return of the Jedi came out. It was like the perfect time to be a Star Wars kid. But I can remember when Return of the Jedi came out, it was sort of like, all right, well, Star Wars is over. Like, that's it. There's 3 movies. This is the end of it. This is the end of the story. And like a year or 2 later, that Ewoks and like the Droids cartoons came on Saturday morning. I was getting a little old for the cartoons, but I remember even at the time being like, Star Wars? Seriously? Star Wars is over. Well, I talked to my wife, you know, who's, got into all the books and stuff. And she's like, no. I mean, it didn't stop. It didn't stop at all. It kept going.
Yeah,
I was
yeah. I'll
totally
be honest,
unaware of
man.
that stuff.
For some franchises, I didn't know they had all this extended like canon of like books and everything. But
Yeah,
and then I came to realize later on, if it's a big property, it probably has a comic here or there, a book series,
yeah.
just anything you can think of when it comes to big series like Star Wars, books, movies, comic books, regular books, video games, TV shows. And the only thing Star Wars now that I collect for, I told people, is just the Darth Vader comics that have come out. I heard those are going to conclude very soon. And I'll probably just get like anything that's after Return of the Jedi, or they did like various like stories of after Vader, after Revenge of the Sith after that. So there's stuff I have there for it. As far as like watching new content for it, that's just probably not gonna happen unless I'm doing that Star Wars project again, because I told you I lost my big channel with that other content on there. Unless I'm doing a project for Star Wars, I'm not checking in out and looking at the content that's and looking at the clips, everything on Twitter. Pretty sure we're not missing much there,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I generally have checked out of anything that's like a remake, a continuation 20 years later. Because for me, there's a specific creative team that put together, say, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Obviously, not the exact same team. It's almost the same time period, too, which has an impact on how stories are told. When you try to do it 20 years later, different people, or even if some of the people are the same, they're 20 years older, which means they're different people. You don't always get what you were expecting. So my attitude is always, well, just because I liked it then, I'm not automatically going to go, wow, I like Star Wars, I'm going to watch the new stuff. And what I found over time was I typically was like, not really into this. And so I kind of checked out on a lot of that stuff. I'd rather see something new that somebody's coming up with, creating new characters, what have you. Or if I'm getting nostalgic, I'll go watch the old stuff. But like you're saying, when you're talking about a movie versus books versus comic books, they're all different storytelling mediums. Stories are told differently in all those things. So it's gone also the same thing. I liked the movies way back when, and I still do. I still pop them in once in a while. And naturally, I put in the ones that have not been modified at all, because I'm an originalist when it comes to Star Wars, Star Trek. But the fact that I like those movies doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to like the books. I mean, Star Trek's a good example. I love the original series of Star Trek. When I've read a lot of the books, the Star Trek novels, even from back then, I don't like most of them. They don't feel like I'm watching an episode of Star Trek. There's a couple here and there that do, but mostly they don't. And so it's no big deal. I'm not angry about it. It's just like, yeah, it's just not, those aren't for me. I'll stick with watching the TV series every so often, So yeah, it changes. Sometimes you're into the stuff, sometimes you're not. Sometimes your tastes change. There's stuff that like I liked when I was a kid, and you come back and watch it later and you might still get a nostalgia hit off of it.
Yeah.
But you're going, wow, like Knight Rider is a good example. I mean, that was one of those shows when you're a kid, had a tough day at school. It's like, I forgot to do this. And you go, oh, Knight Rider's on tonight. Oh, yes. Yes, the day is saved. I come back and watch Knight Rider when I'm in my 40s, and you're going, it's not really that good of a show. But I could still enjoy it. Like 18's a little bit the same way.
Yeah, I had that with
enjoy it.
I had that with Batman Returns. We did a Batman project on my original channel that was taken down, and because I told you we like to watch all the older stuff and leading into the newest stuff, that we had everything in order, and we did it for Batman. So we did 89, and I was like, I watched 89. Oh, and I'll be honest here, I never really thought 89 was all that. I think it's okay, even, and I watched it when I was like maybe 12 years old, honestly, because Channel 5, after the Saturday morning cartoons, used to play those DC movies up until like 5 o'clock in the day, and then you have Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. I remember watching 89, I was like, okay, this is okay. And then Batman Returns, I remember not initially hating it. I thought it was also like a little bit better. Initially, I thought it was a little bit better than the first one. I rewatched it. I was like, this is just a steaming pile of shit. It's terrible. Dude, it made me even like the first one even more, honestly.
I was 17 when Batman 89 came out.
Really?
and
Holy shit!
I was mega. I'm old. What do you want?
I didn't know you
Um,
fossil. Holy crap!
I and I was super into it, dude. I saw
Mhm,
that thing in the theaters probably like 20 times. Friggin' loved it. And
mhm,
it's dark and this and that and the other.
mhm.
And then, of course, I watch it now and I'm like going, holy shit, this is as campy as the old Batman from '66, which I also
Yeah.
loved since childhood. But
Mhm.
yeah, Batman Returns, dude, I'm hyped. Okay, this is going to be awesome. This is a sequel to Batman. It's got Catwoman in it. I loved Catwoman. I hated the Penguin, even back then. I still watched it a bunch of times,
Mhm.
but I haven't even gone back to it. I couldn't stand what they did with the Penguin in that movie. So yeah, but you're right. Over time, you look at Batman '89 years later, and you're going, I remember thinking this was really dark once upon a time, and
Well, it's just narrative
it's
things
not
that they
really
do in the
that dark.
movie. Yeah, like
Oh yeah,
outside
yeah,
of
yeah.
like Jack
It had its
Nicholson,
flaws.
the Michael
Yeah,
Keaton, his Bruce Wayne is very just bad. It's not impactful. It's
yeah,
nothing that I look back and go like, man, that was a really good Bruce Wayne. The Batman stuff is all right. Given the time period, the Batman stuff is actually
yeah.
pretty good when you look at it in scope of like that year specifically. The atmosphere and the tone is there. It's just narratively really boring. Like I remember watching it going like, I almost fell asleep originally rewatching. I was like, man, this is kind of
The
boring.
thing about Batman '89 is it's not a Batman movie; it's a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah.
So
And
if you
Tim
go
Burton
in
makes that
with the
known.
yeah, if you go in with the Tim Burton mindset, it's a lot of fun.
Mhm,
If you go in maybe with a Batman mindset, it might not be. I can remember at the time in the comic book shops, everybody's hyped, right?
mhm,
There's going to be a proper
mhm,
Batman movie because all those dudes who are basically the nerds who are trying to act like tough guys hate the '60s Batman. Oh,
mhm.
it wasn't right. Batman's Dark Avenger. Of course, now look, go back and look at the comic books that it was based on and the ones they're producing. No, he wasn't. Batman was a Dark Avenger for about maybe 3 or 4 years tops at the
Mhm.
beginning of his career. And then he became a kid friendly comic book and was
Yeah,
a kid friendly
yeah,
comic book
yeah,
for like 20 years
yeah.
before that show was made. Now, I loved it, but of course, I kept my mouth shut because everybody is crapping on it all the time.
Mhm.
This is going to be awesome. Michael Keaton's going to play Batman. Oh my God. I can't believe it. Now, ultimately, people kind of embraced it. It was, it was pretty good, but it wasn't exactly what people were expecting. I got to admit, one of the things I don't like about it from that point on is the all black bat suit and especially the armor because he's walking around and he can't turn his head, and that even seems silly to me at the time. You're going, how's this guy going to fight? He can't turn his head around. But it worked. People loved it at the time, and they still kind of do. It
You
sort
know
of
what's
became
crazy, man?
a pattern,
I
from that point
all
on.
I told people this before. I've kept my same positions on it for a very long time. Even when I first watched it, I just thought it was just really forgettable. I think the reason why people like it is because it was the first live action Batman movie they had ever seen. Because if you look at
For a
Batman
lot of people,
'89
yeah.
compared to like this first Spider-Man movie. The first
Hmm.
Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire is way better. Not they're
Oh yeah,
not
yeah,
even honestly close. It's so like it's better acting, better pacing, better dialogue, better everything. And if
yeah.
you're looking at like Batman '89, just compared to that, like the first ones to do it, Superman '78's better. Superman '78's way better. Superman 2's better. I think Batman '89 is really forgettable. Like outside of like Jack Nicholson and a few iconic scenes here and there, like the scene where he drug him off with the rock and everything. I was like,
Nicholson was big. That
yeah.
was huge.
Mhm.
That was huge. And the Prince soundtrack at the time too, which now you
Oh
kind of
yeah.
look at, laugh a little bit, but that was huge at the time. I would agree. I think the first two Spider-Man movies that Raimi did are maybe, you could maybe argue, the two best superhero movies that were ever made. I mean,
Yeah,
he
the only two
nailed
people
it.
put next to it
Just
are Batman
nailed it.
Begins and The Dark Knight. Those are the other two people put against it. Batman
Yeah,
Begins
which is the more
is
serious Batman that I'm not as into, but yeah, obviously people friggin'
yeah,
love
man.
those
I
movies.
watched Batman Begins and I was like, damn, this is so.
Yeah,
I tell people don't even watch the whole movie. Go back and just watch that first part of his origin story, all the way where he's traveling until
yeah,
he fights Ra's al Ghul. Oh my god, that stuff is so good.
yeah.
I
And
remember the
Superman 1
first
and
part
2
of
are
the
both good too.
Remember the first
definitely.
part of the Dark Knight where it's like 6 months after everything's happened and the criminals are like legit scared to do anything because Batman might be around the corner. It's like that's what actual like, my God.
Yeah, that's closer to real Batman.
Yeah, we don't get it's crazy. I was looking back at a lot of older super movies, man. We don't really get some of those like really good ones like we used to. Like the movies now, I don't know what super movies you watch now, but I watched a lot of them recently. These are bad. Like not even bad because I'm older and I can look at the difference. They're just narratively bad. Storytelling wise, awful. Character decision makings are terrible. It's just bad.
It seems to me that at some point Hollywood has genuinely forgotten how to make films. And I don't mean that like just from an artistic sense. It seems like the structure behind the scenes of how a movie got made has sort of been thrown out the window. Because I remember on maybe it was that Multiverse of Madness or something where like they're writing the movie while it's being made. You know,
also doesn't give you any confidence.
And we don't know, and we don't know how it's going to end yet. We're making a movie, we don't know how it's going to end. You're going, dude. I mean, Roger Corman might have done that back in the day, but for a major Hollywood film, that script has probably been banging around Hollywood for 2 or 3 years, and maybe it's going to get a little bit of a rewrite right before it comes out. But you've got the thing storyboarded, you know, and again, you might have something change on set, like if you think of Empire Strikes Back with Harrison Ford, I Love You, I Know. Okay, little things get maybe modified as you're making it, which gives it some vitality. But you look at the way they're making things nowadays, and you're going, that's not how you make movies. It's not how you make good movies. I mean, that's for sure. And then the budgets are crazy too. But yeah, I think that's part of the problem.
Just a movie like that, The Flash, quite literally might be one of the worst super movies of a long time. Keep in mind, little stuff here. Some people, you're a boomer. This is just little stuff here. For anyone who, even if you haven't read comics or have an extended knowledge of superheroes, in the Flash movie, Supergirl is punching General Zod. Keep in mind, we know who General Zod is. You don't have to know the comics to know that, how crazy, mentally deranged that guy is. Supergirl is punching him in his face, and he is not even trying to fight her back. He doesn't even throw her off of him. Does that seem like General Zod to you? She is wailing on him. Like, keep in mind, because this is taking place in that 2013 Man of Steel universe when they go back in time, or they go forward in time, or back, whatever the fuck, movie, terrible fucking movie. That's the same Zod that is fighting Henry Cavill Superman. That guy who cried, he tried to destroy the whole planet. You told me that guy's just gonna let a female Kryptonian of all people wail on him and he's not gonna fight back? That's just stupid from just every line of logic.
Let's say you don't know who any of them are. Does that seem reasonable? Does it seem reasonable? You're just going to stand there and get punched. I mean, if you see that in a movie, you're going to be thinking, well, they're going to explain this, right? There's a reason that the person's not fighting back because that doesn't make any sense. So, because if you think about it, we'll go back to Star Wars for just a minute. People often say, well, these filmmakers nowadays, they don't know the lore. They don't understand the lore. Filmmakers back in the old days didn't know the lore half the time either. Yeah, but they knew how to tell a story.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, most people would say they like Empire Strikes Back the best, right? I mean, not to say Lucas had nothing to do with it, but he wasn't directing it. You have a different guy. You got an old guy. He doesn't give a shit about Star Wars. He's maybe seen Star Wars, but he's not into it. He doesn't know any deep lore. And of course, you're only the second movie, so there's not that much deep lore to know. But it doesn't matter. The guy knows how to make a movie. He knows how to direct. Because the important thing isn't the lore and this and that. Those are great for Easter eggs. That's fun stuff.
That's great for like ultra nerd people. Yeah.
Exactly. The point is to tell a human story, or tell a heroic story. Superman 2. The moment where Superman kneels before Zod, right? And Zod puts his hand out and Supes takes it and crushes the hand. And you get the music stirring in the background. Bah, 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 bah. Dude, everybody's like, yeah. And he stands up, and it's like, okay, you don't need to know who Superman is to get into that particular scene. That's good movie making. It's good storytelling.
Mhm.
That's the problem they have right now. The people who can do it aren't doing it, or they're not given the time to do it, or there's a screwed up process that doesn't allow things to be made in a rational sort of way. And so you get these stories that you just kind of end up going, wait, what? What happened? Who did what? What did they? I don't get it. And so you got to think, if you're making your movies for comic book nerds, you're making it for a really small audience, and a smaller audience now than you had 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago. I mean, there's not a comic book today that sells enough copies that it wouldn't have been canceled after about 2 or 3 issues
Mhm.
back in the 70s. They just don't.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
used to sell, and even just the subscriptions were a lot higher. So you're making it for a really small audience if that's who you're targeting it at exclusively.
Mhm.
That's not what you do. You make a movie that everybody can get into. And talk about Batman 89, people got into Batman 89. I can
Yeah.
tell you right now, when I was in high school, you wear a Batman t-shirt, you are a freaking nerd, right? You just were. You were a dork. You're
Yeah.
wearing a Batman t-shirt. Batman 89 comes out, everybody's wearing a Batman t-shirt. And a lot
It's
of
crazy.
folks
Yeah.
who secretly were Batman fans can now be open about it. And a lot of folks who probably never were a Batman fan are suddenly Batman fans.
It's crazy
That
how we talk
movie
about the
hit.
Flash, even though Michael Keaton's also in that, and they
Yeah,
treat his character stupid, even from just the stuff that he was even able to do.
yeah.
Just another thing, does this sound like good storytelling to people, or is it people just being boomers and don't understand the way world works now? The villain of the Flash movie appears in the final act 10 minutes before the movie's about to end. Does that sound
I
like
mean,
does that sound like a good villain to you that's
I
been
mean, you
impacting the
could
story and you've only seen him once because he pushed him out of the timeline he's running in?
do that, but you're going to have it would have to be structured such that you know that villain's out there and
Yeah.
you're seeing shadows or hints or something and this and that, and then it's that big reveal. Oh my god, here's who it is. Yeah, but you can't just sort of spring on everybody and say, oh, guess what, this is the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
no,
at
and
the end
that's
of the
just
movie,
it.
it's like,
They
oh,
can't tell stories.
this was Barry because he kept messing up. And then, like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah, I
Like,
know.
even that sounds stupid. So if you're wrong, you've seen it. Remember, they're going back in time to save Michael Keaton constantly. It's like, whoa, hold on, whoa. First of
Yeah,
all, how in the world do you go back in time that many times and fail that many times? That already is stupid.
yeah. I mean, time travel and alternate sort of Earths, you got to be really careful with that kind of stuff. It can create a lot of problems because obviously, well, if you can just go back in time, why don't you just keep doing it until you get it right? Go back in time a million times. It doesn't matter. It doesn't take any time to go back in time.
Mhm.
That narratively, that's going to be a problem. Um, I just did a video. I haven't released it yet, but I was looking
Mhm.
at like the first year of the Avengers comic. So like September 63 to 64.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at the DC Justice League comics that were coming out at the same time, going to kind
Mhm.
of compare them. So even back then, you started getting the Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, but that's it. That's it. That's only alternate Earths you got. So Earth 2 is the old Golden Age superheroes.
Mhm.
There's kind of a point to it because now you're seeing them older. So here's the young Justice League. Here's the older Justice Society. So
Mhm.
what's changed? And over time, they develop it so you get like the younger characters like Huntress, Power Girl. You know, if people
Mhm.
forget Huntress was Batman's daughter with Catwoman back in the day. So you get to see another generation of young heroes. You get to see Robin as an adult before they ever had a Nightwing. You get to see. So there's kind of a point to it. There's a story to be told there. The Earth 3 is kind of goofy, but this is the evil version of the Justice League. It's the crime syndicate of America. There's a point to that. Okay, let's see what these characters would be like if the greatest heroes were actually
Mhm.
villains. But you don't say, and there's also an Earth 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. And Earth 10 is where Batman's ears are an inch shorter. And on Earth 453 is where Superman has blonde hair. And it's like that becomes pointless. And when it becomes infinite and you can start swapping people around, your stories have no impact. There's no stakes. Everything can change instantly. Doesn't matter. So they had a good idea with that Earth 2 and Earth 3 because there was a specific story that you could tell. It opened up story opportunities, maybe I should say. Time travel, same thing. Like, you could do time travel in a story, but you've got to be really careful with it because
I think the problem,
logically
you
it
know, I think the
ruins
problem
everything.
is with time travel is people always try to define it by made up rules that even they don't even know if make sense. Mine would be basically you could only use it if I ever wrote a story, you could only use it one time. That's it.
Yeah, you got to do something like that.
Yeah, you have to make it very, very strict in your storytelling because if you make it like this, like I don't know if Deus Ex Machina is the right term for it, or plot device, people say, if you use it as a plot device to kind of fix all your mistakes, then it becomes meaningless. But if you had a story where a character died and then the main character's like, I gotta go, I want to go back in time to save him. I'm depressed without this guy around. I need to go back in time. But you gotta tell him, unless you save him at that moment, you're stuck in this time period, whatever, and the character's still dead. Something like that. You need to make it more of a lockdown thing.
Think about Bill and Ted, right? Where they're doing that thing where, okay, well, we'll later on, we'll go back in time and we'll put this key where we need to find it. Now, that's a comedy. It works in a comedy. It's funny, right?
Yeah. In
a drama kind of thing, it's going to screw things up. I watched a physicist, though. He was really interesting talking about time travel. He says, well, actually, no, you can't go back in time and change anything. People say, well, why not? Right? I wasn't there before. He goes, well, you were there before. Doesn't matter when you leave. You're going back to what has already happened. So when it happened, you were there. Even if you hadn't been born yet, doesn't matter. You went back in time. So that was his attitude. He said, if people are going back in time to kill, an evil man or something like that, well, they all tried and they all failed because that person didn't die. So that was his take. There really is no such thing as going back in time and changing it, but it is a good story concept. You see it in It's a Wonderful Life, right? Which is kind of, in a weird way, a time travel story, in as much as let's look at a timeline where this guy died and he wasn't there. Now, what happened, right? And then, but if we insert him into it, well, look, everything's fine. And that tells a specific story. And really the important thing about that story is not that with Jimmy Stewart dying, that his town is terrible. It's look at the impact it has on him as a person. This is a man who thought, I would have been better off dead. The whole world would have been better off if I was dead. Who sees it in really stark terms and goes, look, my wife is not happy. My kids don't exist,
Herman,
and it's like,
what's up,
there you go. And so, like, there's a story to be told there. It's not just hey, let's just play with time travel. Let's play with concepts. Let's play with alternate realities. There's a human story that you're telling. And that's what I think is missing in a lot of movies they're making nowadays. They're so busy with what is essentially the background, the props, right? Let's make this look this way, and let's have this, and we'll have a laser that does this. And they're not thinking about the human being.
It's always something about a moon and a laser in New York.
You could take the Star Wars saga and you could turn it probably into a Western and it would work. And you don't have any spaceships and you don't have any droids and there's no lightsabers. But if you could stick to more or less the same relationships and the characters going through the things they're going through, you got yourself a story. All that other stuff is what Hitchcock would say a MacGuffin, right? The MacGuffin was what Hitchcock said, the thing that drives the story, but really doesn't matter. So in, what was the one with Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman? I'm losing the name of the movie. Notorious, I think. The MacGuffin is this uranium sand. Okay, that's not the story. Who gives a crap about the uranium sand? It doesn't matter. The story is you have this woman who's put into this situation with these, escaped Nazis from after World War II, and she's got to try to play along so they can find out this information. But at the same time, she's got this secret agent who's working with her, Cary Grant, and he's developed feelings for her, and she's developed feelings for him. And there's the danger, and there's what they're going through, and that's the friggin' story. And you need an excuse for it to happen. And the excuse is we got this uranium. I think it was uranium. I can't even remember, but that's not important. That's the MacGuffin. And in a weird way, Star Wars is not lightsabers. Lightsabers are awesome. They're cool. They're fun. That's not Star Wars.
They're just an aspect of the story.
Exactly. If you replace them with something else, which, by the way, they do in Flash Gordon, it's just normal swords. It doesn't matter. The story is Luke Skywalker, and the story is Darth Vader, and the story is Leia and Han, and etc. That's the story that people are tuning in for, which, by the way, is also why it's difficult to just crap out Star Wars content all the time. Well, we had a droid, we had lightsaber duels, we had Star Wars. No, you didn't, because you didn't have the characters. Now, the prequels, and I was one of the people that didn't really like the prequels, but a lot of people absolutely love the prequels. Why do they love the prequels?
They're not good.
I'm with
They're
you.
not good movies.
But they do. But you know why they do partly? Because they were 10 years old when they saw it. No, they were 10 years old when they saw it.
Same deal with Batman 89. Yep.
There you go. So that's why. But the point is, they did get an emotional connection with Anakin Skywalker and the different characters and Obi-Wan and all that. They managed, again, not so much for me, but Lucas managed with a whole new generation to get them in love with these characters, which is why when they have Anakin coming back in those Obi-Wan episodes, as bad as they might be, a lot of people got excited because, like, dude, this is my childhood. It's Anakin. He's back. That's a big deal for them, because as much as Luke and Leia and Han are Star Wars for some of us, Anakin and Padme and all those are Star Wars for another people. You can't just say, here's some lightsabers and some poorly done up characters and we're not really sure what they're doing or why, and go, Star Wars. Doesn't work that way. It's the same with comic books, right? I mean, Batman's cool, but why is Batman cool? Because he's Batman and the things he goes through and the things he's done. And, and if you could get those relationships right between Batman and Alfred, and Batman and Robin, and blah, 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 blah. There you go. Dude, I friggin' love H.R. Puffin stuff. I was raised on H.R. Puffin stuff. And I can tell you, H.R. Puffin stuff is not good. But I still love it, man.
My thing with the prequels is they're just not good. Like, they are literally what Spider-Man 3 is to Spider-Man 1 and 2. Just obviously in different forms.
It's
like, I told people this. I watched those the first time, not as a kid, obviously. I watched them when we did our Star Wars project. I watched them in order. The first one is literally Carrie, just by Liam Neeson, and the ending fight scene in the movie.
Yeah.
I get it. Or Jar Jar's there, and he's a shit character, but people remember because he's stupid. The second one is quite literally just... that movie is bad. Like, Attack of the Clones is actually legitimately just bad. The third one is what I call a good, bad movie. Like, they had a lot of good ideas there, badly executed in a lot of areas. It kind of comes together to at the very end. Like, the third one's the only one I like anyway. But even that's kind of scuff when it comes to, like, how he turns into Vader, because we got to factor in how scuffed that storytelling is. And I've never bought into the idea that something that could be for kids just automatically has to mean it's shit, or we shouldn't care if we're telling a good story.
Oh, absolutely not.
Because it's for kids. Like, I always felt that was a cop-out. Like, anyone that says things like, well, it's for kids. Also, just because it's a kid movie, that means we got to make shit stories? No wonder why kids movies suck now. Well, fuck, we've been letting these people write them.
Avatar The Last Airbender is for kids.
Lord.
And I'd say Avatar The Last Airbender might be one of the best things that was made that decade. That's freaking incredible. I watched it with my daughter because she was younger. And honestly, probably wouldn't have watched it otherwise. If I didn't have a kid, I probably would have never seen it. And, you start off and it's kind of cute, but there's actually a little bit of serious stuff in it. And the friggin' show grows with its audience and gets really intense by the end of it. And you're going, that's made for kids, but holy crap. Harry Potter. I mean, I'm not as into it as some people, but Harry Potter was made for kids, but holy crap, man, it really made an impact. So absolutely. Quality for kids is important, just like quality for adults.
Yeah, I don't know where that even... I'm pretty sure he's the one that kind of, George Lucas, putting that in people's brains, like, oh, it's just for kids. So automatically that it means it's for kids, it could just be shit storytelling. I don't even know where that... And because people treat kids' entertainment differently. People, or the same thing when it comes to, like, animated movies, right? Where if you were talking about, like, let's say 2 Batman movies, Mask of the Phantasm, which is honestly great, versus something like, I don't know, Batman 89. People will go, well, that's a cartoon. And it's like, it doesn't matter if it's a fucking rock down the street. What difference does it make? They're both movies.
I'll tell you right now, the reason you have superhero movies right now to a large extent is Bruce Timm's Batman, without a doubt, because Batman 89 comes out, a new Batmania. Batman Returns, people were still into it, but that was a little dark. Can we make it a little lighter? And then you start getting movies, and by the time you're at the last one with Mr. Freeze and all that, people are like, this sucks, and we're done. And as that was happening, and people, mainstream is like done with stuff, Bruce Timm's Batman is sneaking in, and nerds are going, holy crap, this is really good. Mask of the Phantasm is a good example of that. I just found an old videotape from the video store I worked in. That was one of the screener copies of that in a bunch of stuff. And I watched it, and I'm like, yeah, it's still good. And then that led to Superman, led to Justice League International, or I'm sorry, Justice League Unlimited, you know, and Marvel. And like, it kind of, they had to start over again, because we talk about now there's superhero fatigue and people just don't want to watch these movies anymore, which has a lot to do with quality. Well, that we kind of went through that with that initial spate of Batman, and those cartoons sort of kept it alive until you get Batman Begins coming in and sort of launching things all over again and getting a mainstream audience back into it. Yeah, they were for kids, but they were just freaking good. I mean, the comic books, all this stuff was based on.
Right now, you could have your daughter watch Batman the Animated Series. It's not
absolutely.
I think people treat some of that stuff with kid gloves way too much. Kids can watch dark stuff and not be affected by it at all, because a big reason why is they don't know any better. They don't even know if that scene is dark. They just know that, hey, I like that because that cool thing happened, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously, you could go too far with certain things.
Obviously, like,
which frankly,
like Saw. If your kids are watching Saw, which we did, you know, it's crazy when I was younger. Parents were like, yeah, my kid watches Friday the 13th. Your kid watches what? That's crazy. That's insane.
My mom was a kindergarten teacher, and my mom would get kids in kindergarten who they didn't know their letters, they didn't know their colors, any numbers, any of that stuff, but they'd seen every Nightmare on Elm Street movie. They'd seen Chucky. They'd seen, and we're talking 5-year-olds, man. Like, you know, so
the common thing, moms would be bragging like, yeah, my kid watches Hostel. Your kid watches Hostel. Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Hostel is,
and dude, I'd probably put my little kid in front of a friggin' Nightmare on Elm Street movie before I'd put him in front of some of that torture porn. I mean,
yeah,
good Lord. I mean, like
you could probably put your kid in front.
I wouldn't put my kid in front of those, but you know, like Scream probably wouldn't be that bad. You know, the first few, but like something like Nightmare on Elm Street, oh God, that's pretty crazy. It has an impact.
I was saying, imagine telling your kids like, honey, everything's really good in the world, but there's this guy that kind of might kill you in your dream. You're like, what? I'm supposed to be safe in my dreams. Yeah. I mean, traumatized. I'm making not be able to sleep properly or some shit, you know?
Well, and you know, part of the point of things like comic books and Batman and all that is it does introduce the concept of evil. They're bad people. They want to do bad things, you know, but there's good people too who are trying to stop it. And it gives kids, at least it's sort of a safe way to introduce kids to a reality that they're going to grow up into, whether you like it or not, you know, because at some point you do grow up and you get out there and you go, oh, holy crap, there's some screwed up people out here. You know, well, okay, the Joker, maybe that's your safe intro to there's some weird folks out there that aren't too good. You know,
and then you go on the internet and you like, even if you're not a comic guy, just go on the internet and type like most horrifying things Joker's done. There's a story I had ordered a while ago from like Brian Azzarello or some shit like that. The Joker skinned a guy alive. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I grew up on the Cesar Romero Joker. Joker just robbed banks with weird props,
robbed banks.
Although Cesar Romero to me is one of the darkest Jokers there is, with that friggin' makeup over his mustache.
Oh yeah.
Crazy. That dude looks crazy. But yeah, I mean, once you hit the late 80s and Frank Miller and some of those guys, you start getting a lot of really scary.
Oh, I wanted to ask you this.
And, you know,
one of the last things I wanted to ask you before we head out, which is the Long Halloween. Did you hear they're going to do a Long Halloween ending to it? A third part?
Oh,
actually,
no.
Yeah, they're going to do a Long Halloween third part.
I've never read the Long Halloween. I got out of comic books before some of that stuff happened.
Interesting.
Yeah, you know, well, there were a couple reasons for it. It would have been the early 90s. You were starting to see some different art going into comics that frankly I just didn't like. And it's some artists who people love, but at the time I was like, I don't really dig this stuff. You were starting to get like, here's several variant covers, except they're really nothing. It's just an excuse to make you buy extra copies, which kind of got on my nerves. But the main thing was I was getting into Warhammer. Yeah. And Warhammer's an expensive hobby. And so there was a point where I'm going, I'm not really loving these books that much anymore, and I want to buy miniatures that I'm never going to paint. Now, I'm not joking. I still have some of this stuff in my garage that I'm going, I need to sell these things because these are like antique Warhammer miniatures now. Mm-hmm. And that sort of got me out of comic books for a while. And then you're getting married and you're having kids and there's other things to spend money on. And maybe I need, let me tell you something. I had the full run of Todd McFarlane original Spider-Man. And I more or less gave them away at a certain point because I'm like, I got to make room. There's too much crap in my office. I got to get rid of this stuff. So then later, and by the way, I got rid of Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man. I kept my Booster Gold comics to bring Booster Gold back into, because at the time I'm like, it gives a crap. They're not going to be worth anything anyways. It doesn't matter.
And then
I enjoy these. And I look, again, getting Booster Gold #1 was a big deal for me when I was 13. So I had a nostalgic, love for this thing. But so I got rid of a bunch of that stuff. And then it's maybe like a decade later, more money to spend and things like that. And I see a whole bunch of comic books, old comic books in an antique store. And they were like 25 cents a copy. Mm-hmm. And some a little torn up, but we're talking like a lot of stuff from the 70s, from the 80s, like Shogun Warriors, Godzilla, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, 25 cents each. Yeah, why not? Okay. And getting those sort of got me back into comic books and mostly at the time buying back issues. But now I'm kind of at a point going, I missed out on some stuff. There was some good stuff along there that I need to go and maybe start getting. Some, maybe not all.
Popular belief. A lot of people think that stuff started getting, good after like 90s or whatever. From that 2000 period, all the way where like I would have grown up reading them if I had enough money to, there was a lot of great stories there. But people had just given up because, I understand it. Given the fact that the world worked differently back then, like you waited for things, and the way that media has evolved to consume stuff is a lot more differently now. Fully understandable, but I would say anyone that gave up comics around 80s, 90s, there was some great stuff in the 2000s. I'll say 12s.
I'm trying to collect a few. Yeah. I'm trying to collect a few. So I haven't read The Long Halloween, but I've heard about The Long Halloween.
Ryan says, if you go into the field of making horror movies or comics, why?
Does it make, well, here's an Adam Carolla quote that I think is very accurate. If it ain't making you happy and it ain't making you money, don't do it. So if making comics or horror movies makes you happy or makes you money, do it. If you can do it. That's, to me, that's the, and let's be honest, for most people, it's, well, I need to make money at it, because if you're making comic books, if you're making horror movies, that's not necessarily something you do, in your time off on the weekend. It takes a little more than that.
Oh, you're fine, Kevin. So you're fine.
You need to make something. But yeah, no, I mean, does it make you money? Does it make you happy?
Yeah, I think if you're reading comics and you're trying to get a girl, I think, might have a little bit of complications there. Also, if you're getting into comics to make money, comics don't really make you a lot of money, except in very few instances, I would say,
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're doing manga, maybe, but then again, I don't know how much money those guys actually make. I mean,
the
greats of the old comic book eras didn't make a hell of a lot of money doing it.
Well, it's interesting because if you do that in like the novel scene, it's so much different. How like if a person hit it big with something, they hit it really big, made a lot of money. But when it comes to comics, if a person hit it big, it's like debatably, did you make money? It's like, what? That's ridiculous to think about, honestly.
Yeah. I heard people talk about Canadian actors, and like you'd see them just on the street, and they're just normal people, and so they use the term Canadian famous. Like, it's like, wow, this guy's on TV, but like he also just lives, 2 houses down, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, comic books, I think that's maybe the weird thing about comics is that maybe not in the old days, because you didn't know who anybody was.
Right. Yeah.
But at a certain point, you start knowing who the creators are. You're famous, but you ain't rich.
Yeah.
Which is why you do want to go to maybe cons and have people pay for autographs or whatever, because like everybody knows who you are, but you weren't necessarily making any money doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's tough. I watch the Graybeards draw stream. I don't know if you ever watched that. Aaron Lepresti on his channel, David Brohawk Williams, and they tell stories just while they're drawing about this and that and the other.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a tough business to be in. It was a tough business to be in. They took advantage of you. It wasn't easy and it wasn't happy. But at the same time, they loved what they were doing. They loved drawing the stuff. They loved telling the stories, and that kind of kept them going. And if you could reach some certain level of fame, now you can put some books out and actually make a few bucks. But yeah, it's tough. When I was doing all those role-playing game supplements that I was writing, I wasn't really making any money on it. I mean, I still sell them. They're, PDFs and hard copies. You can get them like on Lulu and stuff. I maybe make a couple $1,000s a year selling those things. That's about it. But I was having fun doing it. And I was learning how to publish these things and put stuff together and yada, yada, commissioning art. I'd never done that before. That was kind of fun. So I was having a good time doing it. At a certain point, I got a little burned out on it, so I stopped making them. But yeah, it was fun. That's why I did it.
The other thing I would say for anyone that's creative, just when YouTube, comics, anything, it's just really hard to get people interested in anything you're doing. It's just really hard because people got to factor in with how this kind of works. The person that is already kind of thinking the same thing that you're thinking is either already doing it, maybe has been doing it longer, maybe has just started. Just think of it like that, because I think people just think just because they're doing something, it's going to end up being successful because they're just doing that thing. It's like, that's not how that works, honestly. Yes. It also depends what you define as success, honestly. If you define success, you just doing it and finally getting able to do it, that's fine. Everyone's success is differently. But if you're talking money, I think that's a little bit more different because, to be successful in terms of money, you have to make a certain amount of money to be considered successful. That's just how it's always been.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, well, with Ripiverse, I mean, Eric July went into it as a business and I got to make X amount of money and blah, blah, blah. And obviously it took off faster than he thought it was going to. I'm sure he had a business plan that was going to take a lot longer to get where he's managed to get.
I remember when he said, when he said he just wanted to make one comic, it might break even and we'll see where it goes. Imagine that actually not happening. That is actually what happens. Some comics come out, they literally they maybe might break even. You kind of contemplate, do you want to keep doing it? That didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
Well, like what, $4 in, $5 in now?
One of the creators I like a lot is Brian Baugh, who does Wolf and Batsy. And he's been doing that book for a long time. Different publishers, self-publishing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He loves it. And that's why he sticks with it. And he just did a crowdfunding thing for I think it was issues 11, maybe 10, 11, and 12, maybe. But and he did pretty well with it, and it's just, but he's got a drive to do it. And that's the key. Look, there's going into it as a business, and there's going into it because it's fun. And
I don't think either way is wrong, honestly.
Exactly.
You gotta factor in. You can't pay artists off IOUs or any of that bullshit. Our artists got to get paid. People need to be getting paid,
Exactly.
And I think the reason why money is a big selling factor, a lot of people kind of just neglecting their mind, is just look at your life in general. In anything, you can't do anything without money. You can't pay your rent without money. You can't buy food without money. You can't pay your car note without money. Money actually should be the most important thing because that's how you're going to be able to live. It's just, I'm sorry, I know people probably don't want to hear that, but that's just how it is,
And if you're going to go into that, you've got to understand business.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, comic book shops came and went quite often. And the reason they came and went quite often was you got a dude who loves comic books. He's got a lot of back issues. I'll start a comic book store. Doesn't know anything about retail. Doesn't know anything at all. He doesn't survive. The comic book shops that survive were people who understood or who quickly learned how retail works. They had a business sense.
Yeah.
It's nice that you like comic books. That's not enough to make your comic book shop successful. right?
Mhm.
And it's great that you know how to draw.
Look
really
at it
well.
from a different point of
But
view. Like
that's
you have your own,
yeah.
like you have your own YouTube channel. You realize, wait a minute, me just making videos is just not enough. I have to put out more than one video. I have to make sure they're structured a certain way. I have to do these certain things. I think people think there was you probably know the study is. Remember back, I think around 2012, 2015, they did this like group, this big, massive group study with college students to figure out if average kids who grew up in that time frame, which would be like my time frame, probably we'd be out of high school by then, so like the 1990s kids, right? To try and see if they could critically think for themselves. Not I know notice what I just said to people, not think, critically think.
Critically think.
Right. I forgot the actual results. I'll be honest here, I haven't seen them in a long time. I would have to genuinely look them up. I'm pretty sure it came out to somewhere around a good amount of them could not critically think for themselves, because I think people think too much in like 1 + 1 = 2 without thinking about the other X, Y, and Z, you know? Yeah. Because like I said before, you might like doing something, but if that doesn't bring in any money, I'm just going to be honest here. You know, you got to make a bigger, you got to make a better plan, make a better product, anything, literally anything.
If you're primarily emotional, you're going to get into trouble.
Probably, yeah.
Don't be that. And so that's why as you grow up, you got to learn, you know, the key is you got to learn how to
you can't even get dick. Okay, that's true. You also can't get dick or vagina without
nothing,
money.
Yeah,
you can't get a prostitute without money. Keep it in mind that.
You really can't get a prostitute without money.
Especially in Vegas. I've been to Vegas. They charge a lot.
Prostitution is not legal in Las Vegas.
Yeah. Allegedly,
it's not legal here
in Minecraft.
So we don't have any of it.
Said by a guy named Dad Dennis Pop's Culture.
That's like the old days when they'd say they got the mob out of Vegas. And I'm going, all right, so it's in every city in America except Las Vegas. Perfect, right? Actually, what happened is the mob in Vegas went corporate, and that the corporations. Exactly.
Are you the mob if you're actually running the businesses, right?
And there are old time Vegas people who go, so much better when the mob was in charge. It was so much better. You didn't have problems. You didn't have problems.
Whenever I'm in
a casino,
whenever I'm in Vegas next time for one of those F&T meetups, we got a meetup in Vegas actually.
Oh yeah. I was at the last one. Yeah.
Wait, you were at the last one?
Yeah, I was at the last one for a little while. I had to work the next day, so I couldn't be there real late. But
you probably saw me then. I was there too.
I might have, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people.
That's crazy. You saw a black man and you didn't notice who they are. See? You didn't notice.
Oh, you were the black guy there.
Among the very few that were there, right? You could see
the elite. The elite. Yeah, but you know, part of life is like learning to defeat your own ego. So you're not ruled solely by your emotions. It doesn't mean you're emotionless, but you need to know how to, and like if you're going into business, you got to do that. It's a whole different world than just like for me, making my role-playing game stuff was not a business. It was fun. I didn't hardly promote stuff. I just did it. I put it out there. Some people bought it. Dude, somebody in Sweden bought my book. I'm like, holy crap, there's a book with my name on it in Sweden. That's crazy. That was enough for me. I didn't care. As long as I made enough money that I could pay my artists without, losing money.
You didn't start.
I was okay. Yeah.
You're okay. You're on other white people. You're fine.
Yeah, exactly. But it was enough for me to do that stuff. I wasn't approaching it as a business. As a business, my books were a failure. I was getting paid maybe like 1/100 of a cent per word to do my writing. That's stupid. You don't make a living doing that. It was fun for me. And if you say I'm going to become a comic book creator, okay. What do you mean comic book creator? Do you mean somebody who's made a comic book? Or do you mean somebody who's going to make a living making comic books?
Yeah.
Two different things.
I think people should think about that from not just comics, creative things you're going to do. Yeah. What are you defining it as? Are you doing it for fun or a hobby? Or are you doing it as a business? That's different, because if you're doing it as a hobby, you also must understand if you get like fuck all results, then that's what you get because you're doing it for a hobby. And if you're fine with that, that's fine. Like no one can determine what you deem as fine. It's up to you specifically. But if you're doing it as a business and you're trying to pay people and it's like, or pay the little team you have, well, then you're going to have to come up with a good idea and figure out how to get money. It's much different going from a hobby to an actual businessman. A lot of people don't define what they're trying to do in something. They're just doing it because they want to do it, which is fine. But then they learn along the way and then trouble starts to hit. Yeah. I feel like if people, go ahead.
If you're going to make your comic book company a success, you got to figure out a way to screw Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko out of their money.
True. And you must also write a comic book where trees start having sex with lesbians. Treesbians.
Well, that would be big these days. Yeah, but you know, and that sounds terrible. But the fact of the matter is,
that sounds actually
you know,
objectively like
back
shit.
in the day, like I don't know how much money you made selling comic books back in the 1950s.
Selling that, I made like probably $5.
Well, you got to find the right audience for that. But you know, one of the reasons that business was so ugly back in the days was because there was probably not a big profit margin on this stuff. And it sounds horrible, but like, if you want to keep the presses rolling, you're going to do what you're going to do. And if you don't want to participate, don't. And eventually, comic book artists and writers were able to some degree say, not doing this anymore. We got to have a better deal, you know. But it's been an uphill struggle for those guys. But yeah, it's a business, and business can be ugly and it can be angry. And if that's not what you're into, again, if I wanted to make a lot of money on YouTube right now, I should be live streaming about what happened on Saturday, and I should be live streaming about
House
Disney sucks and this is that, and House of the Dragon, etc. Like, that's what I should be doing. That gets viewers. Instead, I'm making friggin' videos reviewing Mr. Muscle from 1976 because I'm doing stuff that I have fun with and I don't give a crap.
Yeah,
I'm not approaching it as a business, you know.
Yeah, and that's something that people need to understand when it comes to just content creation in general. Most people are gonna want you to talk about the newest thing that happens because
absolutely
that's the most current thing. I can't fault general average people for wanting to know about the newest thing because that's probably what you're also into at that same moment. So you have something in common. But then again, vice versa, if you also just want to be in your own happy place, that's also fine too. You know,
and I mean, like I do some reviews.
You're gonna find, and what's crazy about YouTube is you're gonna find people that are also in that same happy place like you are. I just kind of like that, which is fine. You know?
Yeah, you find your own little crowd. I do some reviews of new comic books that are coming out, like the Rippa stuff, and I just got some King Cryptids, you know, from Pete Cimetti, Alterna Comics. I've been reading through those.
You bought a Black Guy's comic book?
I buy all sorts of people's comic books.
That's actually crazy. I do too.
You know what's actually funny though is back in the day, like you didn't necessarily know if an artist or a writer was black or white or whatever. I mean, you didn't have the internet. You didn't have trade publication necessarily. You had a name, right? Patrick Owsley. Okay, somebody named Patrick Owsley wrote this. I didn't know if he was black or white. I didn't really care one way or the other. I'm just reading the book. I mean, sadly enough, a lot of people never looked at those names. You know, you knew John Byrne, you knew Chris Claremont, you know, you knew some of the huge names because they were just huge. But it's something I make a habit of nowadays, going through back issues of like, okay, read all those names on the bottom there so you can start figuring out who was doing what and how they were doing and maybe how they were changing over time. But when you're 13, I'm reading Spider-Man. I don't know crap who's doing it. If you're going to comic book shops, you started learning who Todd McFarlane was because the name was getting big. It was getting a buzz. But like,
maybe our lack of knowing everything made things a lot more better. But then again, I like being in the know now. That way I know who's a piece of shit.
It's cool both ways, you know. But I mean, it didn't disrupt our ability to love the stuff. But
true. Actually, crazy, man. Despite all the stuff going on now, given how good or bad movies may be for some people, I still enjoy this stuff. I still enjoy watching it the same way I used to watch as a kid. It's just, you know, I just look at things a little bit different now and I talk about them differently. Doesn't mean I don't love them. And you talk about them passionately because you want them to be better. Why fans a fan of anything, you know?
Absolutely. Look, if I watch something and I go, I really friggin' hate this, I'm not going to review it. I'm just not going to do it. A, because it's not fun, and B, because some folks out there love it, and it clearly wasn't for me. So I don't want to be the person going, "That's a piece of shit. Don't look at this thing." When one of those people hearing that might actually love this thing, you know. I mean, that's part of the thing of reviewers is over time learning their tastes, you know, so that like some reviewer says this movie was no good, you can be like, well, he never likes those movies, and a lot of times he's hated them, but I liked them, so that's cool. I get it, you know. But for me, if I really hate it, I don't review it. If I watch it and I like it more or less, but I don't love it, yeah, I'll review it and say, look, here's what I thought was kind of weak in this story. Here's what I didn't think worked. and try to make sure people understand that, like of what I'm criticizing. So maybe I come in and say, I thought the pace was a little bit slow, so I didn't enjoy it that much. A person who doesn't mind a slow pace might say, oh, okay, well, that's not a problem for me. But he liked the rest of it, so maybe it's cool for me to, I'll like it. It's also why I try when I'm doing stuff is not to go, this thing sucks or this thing is good. I try to say, I liked it or I didn't like it.
Yeah, I try to
subjective.
I try to word things in a way that I've always done when I talk about this stuff. To basically how I want to talk about it is gonna be how I would perceive someone would feel that I understand it. Like Halloween Ends. Sometimes when a movie's that bad, I just straight up say they're just dog shit. But I'll explain why I think it's dog shit from all my different points of view. Now, if someone disagrees, that's fine. I'm not saying you have to agree with me, but if someone's asking my opinion on something, I'll tell you why I don't think it's good or not. You know, it just depends on. I think people that are viewers need to understand. People just review things differently than other people. You know, so if someone is only kind of basing how they feel about something because someone else said, well, I would always say this. Even if I like the person, but which is only I don't hate anybody really. A few people on YouTube are just straight up pieces of shit. Even if I like that person and I enjoy their content and their opinions on stuff, I'm not going to base my opinion on their opinion. It's something I've never did that ever, honestly. You know,
most it should be sort of a guide. You know, like that dude likes a lot of stuff I like. He liked it. I'll give it a shot. And you might come and watch it and say, "Well, I didn't like it that much, but it's cool." And there was a time, sure, when if you said that sucks, people understood what you meant was I didn't like it. We're getting into this weird place now where it becomes like a battle. You know, like if somebody says something online that I don't think is true, but I don't do anything about it, it'll become true. So I have to get in there and I got to fight this person. You know, and that's why like you probably don't get a lot of Gen X getting into these internet fights because we're like, okay, whatever.
Sometimes you get old enough to
moving on.
You pick and this is saying you pick and choose your battles and you get older.
Exactly, man. You're just like, okay, you hated it. That's whatever, man. I got something else to do right now. But there's a lot of younger people. It's like, what? What do they say?
Well, last few things I'll ask you. First thing first is, do you have any big plans coming up for 2024 and anything else you want to let people know about? Anything you're working on content wise?
Well, I mean, I'm just still working on the videos. I post Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Monday is Alpha Flight Monday right now. Started at really, I think it was the 1st of January. Going through Alpha Flight from issue number 1. Should take it to issue number 52 by the end of the year. Next year, I'm going to switch over and start doing Justice League International. Basically, these are books that I liked a lot back in the day, and I collected large runs of them with just a few I was missing that I had to fill in the gaps. So I thought, what the heck? Kind of fun to reread them. I do that online. Wednesday and Saturday, it just depends. TV, toys, games, movies, books, what have you. I review all sorts of stuff, just basically stuff I like, and maybe you dig it too, and maybe you don't. That's cool too. So that's pretty much what I'm doing on my channel. I'm just trying to stick to 3 videos a week, and maybe next year I might think about doing some streaming, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Streaming? What the heck? You're gonna be a hot e-thought streamer?
We'll see. I got to maybe take 10 pounds off.
Yeah.
And then I'll be ready for that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Tank says building good entertainment company takes 3 Ds: determination, discipline, and sleep deprivation. Deprivation.
And dollars doesn't help, or doesn't.
Yeah. Dollars have. I would say 4 Ds. Money also could factor into a lot of that.
Going back to commercial real estate, when we had the big crash, we got a lot of people who were starting retail businesses. Right. Hey, I like to cook. I'll start a restaurant. And the rents were pretty low at the moment, and there was oftentimes you get the equipment, but what these people didn't have was a year of cash on hand to keep themselves alive in their business. But you got to have those dollars built up because you need to be able to survive with very few customers as you slowly build a clientele. So don't forget the dollars. It's not enough to just have enough for your first month's rent and to buy the equipment and to buy whatever you're selling. You got to have enough money you can live on for a while to keep that thing going.
Beach stream win. Oh, Chloe, I would like to have asked for IRL streams. The problem is I don't have the necessary stuff for IRL streams. My friend does actually, and coordinating all that is a little hard right now. But if I were, and he's too self-conscious to do beach streams. He'll do them with me, like if we're in our own houses, but man, outside streams, no, he would never do that. He is too self-conscious. But if I were to do a beach stream, I'd be half naked, 6-pack, looking like Henry Cavill, which obviously I'm pretty sure you guys will believe me. Not me. What? What do you mean? What do you mean not me? What? Hello? So
well, I have a kiddie pool on the patio. I could fill it up with water and go sit out there.
All the hot tub streams
with my feet in the water. I could do that. Yeah.
I'll ask you one last thing, man. Is you got any shout outs you want to get to anyone in particular, and anything else you want to say before we head out?
No, not really. I just want to say thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I've never done one of these streams before, so that was kind of a fun thing to get into. And I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. So make sure you guys go check out Dad's Den of Pop Culture's YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to him on there. Follow him on any of the other social media platforms that he's on. I'm gonna try and make sure I do this with the one-on-one guests more often. But as you guys, people, I'm a terrible host. I'm just gonna go on Twitter and be like Destiny right now. I'm not. I would.
Yeah, not right now for sure.
Yeah. I might to find a rope. So thank you guys for checking out this episode of the Iron Man podcast, and we'll see you guys later. Good.